Hi everyone. Let's talk about the Blob Brush. We're going to look at why it's different and how it works different from the normal paintbrush in Illustrator. So if you look at the normal paintbrush, let's start there. When you draw a brush stroke, what you're actually doing is drawing a stroke line. That stroke line has anchor points and has a stroke setting which can be applied and changed in a variety of ways. Let's say I open one of the brush palettes and I select a different brush, or if I use a bristle brush, any one of the options inside the brush palette itself are available, and what you're doing is you're changing and tapering the appearance of the stroke. The Blob Brush, on the other hand, is very different. So it's unique in that what you're doing when you paint with the Blob Brush is you're actually painting a shape. So if I scribble with the Blob Brush, looks in appearance like a normal brush where I just scribbled, but if you actually select that object, or if you look at it in outline view, you'll see that I've actually used the brush to create a blob of a shape. So you're working with objects instead of strokes. And that's a critical difference when thinking about why we have the Blob Brush and how it works differently from a typical art brush. So let me show you some of the settings that you can change. I don't have the benefit of a Wacom tablet right now, so I couldn't show you the pressure sensitivity of the Blob Brush, but it is possible if you double click the Blob Brush itself. Now, if you're looking for the Blob Brush, it's directly connected to the paintbrush tool. And if you'd like to open the Blob Brush settings, you double click it and you pull up the settings. Now, by default, it's set to a fixed setting, which means that the size of the brush is the same. But if you do have the benefit of a tablet, you can change this to pressure sensitivity. And there are some additional tilt and adjustments that can be made to it so that this brush can be turned into kind of a pressure sensitive stylus that you work with. For now, like I said, I don't have a tablet connected, so I'm not going to change that. Also, there is a fidelity slider, so you can go from super accurate to super smooth depending on your hand motion. And you can also create a variation in the size. So if it's variable or pressure sensitive, you would create a small size for the light touch and a large size for hard touch, and that would create that size variation. So since it's on kind of a smooth pattern, it means when I scribble and draw with the brush, it's going to correct and overcorrect my my line work. Here's a couple other things to know about the Blob Brush. Let's say I wanted to paint some clouds. Well, I might use my rectangle tool and draw a background and fill it with a color. In this case, I just use the faded light blue gradient. I'm going to change the direction of that gradient with the gradient tool so it goes from top to bottom like that. Okay. Now I'm going to switch back to the Blob Brush. Now what I could do is use the Blob Brush, and I like to tease that this is my Blob Ross painting. Dad joke. I can use this to paint some happy clouds. So what I would do is let go of that background shape, switch to the Blob Brush, change my color to white, and start painting. And just allow myself to experiment there with some happy clouds. I'm going to change the brush size. By the way, if you're pressing the bracket keys on your keyboard, those are the two keys right underneath the minus and the plus symbol. That will make your brush smaller or larger. That's if you're painting with a mouse like I am right now. If I had a stylus, I could, press and make it thicker or thinner depending on what I was doing. All right. Alright, so in this case I'm just kind of filling in, trying to brush in a little cloud here, painting as I go. Let's say I want to change the color a little bit. Maybe go with a little gray. Okay, so I'll select gray here, start painting over the top. And that's a little too light for that. Oh, something else that's happening. Notice how when I pick the gray color from my swatch palette, it filled my fill box. And then when I painted, it continued painting white. Don't know why this is, but in effect, when I'm using the blob brush, I am painting an object with a fill color. I'm not painting a stroke, right? But for some reason, the blob brush still picks up the stroke color as the dominant color that it's using. So if I want to change the color, I need to click on the stroke on the toolbar, make sure that that color is forward as the topmost selection swatch, change the color of the stroke, then my blob brush will pick up that color as the painting color. Again, that's backwards. We're painting with objects, not strokes, but still Illustrator is trying to outthink you and say, you really think you're using a brush, so we're going to make you use a stroke color. Weird. Adobe, I don't understand. Anyways, here we go. So now I might paint these little silver linings on these clouds. Silver linings in my clouds, in my happy clouds. And try to give it a little more detail, right? What's cool is, let me select these, is these paintings, these brush strokes are now solid objects, solid shapes. And because they were painted with the same color, they hold together. So you can continue going back and forth between these different colors and they will merge with the previously painted objects. So it's pretty handy. I find that this is a really useful tool when I want to have a more freehand approach, when I want to have artwork that doesn't need to be precise and square and geometric, but instead can have some soft edges and some rounded features, and that's when I might use the blob brush. It's also pretty good at just coloring. Let's say you need to fill in an area with color pretty fast and you don't feel like using the pen tool, then you can switch to the blob brush and start filling in a solid area as you go. Alright, so happy clouds, happy trails. See you next time.